Coming up.
Well, we're going to work with Ukraine. We're going to work with everybody, and we're going to make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long-term.
Fresh off his meeting with Vladimir Putin, President Trump hosts Ukraine's President Zelenskyy and other European leaders at the White House. Tonight, where peace talks stand. Plus, the push to overturn gay marriage. A look at the case that could go before the Supreme Court.
We posted it and we went to sleep. It was at night. It was like 9 at night. And then we woke up and it just blew up.
Teenage triplets lighting up Instagram with the gospel. How they're using their popularity to spread the good news. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A historic day at the White House as leaders from across Europe convene to talk about ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. A who's who of European leaders met with President Trump today at the White House. Among them, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The gathering came on the heels of President Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, where he hoped to walk away with a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. That didn't happen as the two sides continued their military back and forth over the weekend. Here to discuss what did happen Friday and today is senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Kelly, let's start with today's meeting. Who was all there and what were the parties hoping to accomplish?
I have to tell you, Jenna, it was quite a moment, and that graphic that we showed at the top of the show with the three men, Zelenskyy, Trump, as well as Putin together, that is what they're really seeking, a trilateral meeting. But today, Volodymyr Zelenskyy of Ukraine was there along with EU leaders, 7 EU leaders to be present to meet with the president. This was an historic day, and I've got to respond the way that Zelenskyy talked. He said this during today's meeting with the EU leaders at his side, as well as the President of the United States and Mr. Zelenskyy. He said, "We had a very good conversation with Mr. Trump, very sensitive points that were discussed." First, he talked about security guarantees, stating that all of us, Mr. President, want to finish this war. Very important that U.S. humanitarian efforts be applied as well in terms of getting an exchange of prisoners. Something else he did. Zelenskyy thanked the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, for sending a letter to Vladimir Putin of Russia, stating that it would be good. Now is the time to return the 20,000 children, Ukrainian children, who have been abducted since the start of this war.
Yeah, and that estimate's low, actually. Some think it could be way more than those 20,000. You know, the White House says it felt like it had enough progress on Friday with President Putin to be able to host today with President Zelenskyy and these European leaders. Kelly, what can you tell us about how this meeting came to be?
So, look, the president, as well as Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, all of them agreed that President Putin of Russia had agreed to some terms that provoked him to call the EU leaders and Zelenskyy to hastily put this together, to have them come here to talk about what's on the table, security guarantees. That is the main thing. And it's up to them to make that happen. The president says beyond the security guarantees, they have to agree to what type of land they'll give up. And more importantly, can they go forward with a trilateral meeting between Putin, Zelenskyy, as well as President Trump? And Mr. Zelenskyy invited President Trump to be part of that trilateral meeting, stating that it's very important. And the EU leaders thanking Mr. Trump for actually bringing this dialogue about, because without him, they say it wouldn't have been done.
Yeah, you know, they were saying, too, that I think it was the Finnish president was saying that more has been done in these last 2 weeks than in the 3+ years since the war started. The president went into Friday's meeting today, hoping for a ceasefire. That did not happen. At this point, he's saying he's more interested in peace, more interested in that than a ceasefire. What deals did the White House secure? Do we know anything about that?
So it's what I've stated before, those security guarantees. And he believes if we can get to the security guarantees and agree to what type of land will be given up, then they can get to a quick peace deal.
All right, senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Thank you, Kelly. Busy day at the White House, indeed. Well, senior international correspondent George Thomas has been reporting on Russia's invasion of Ukraine since 2014, spending time in some of that country's most devastated areas. And George joins us now for some analysis. George, good to see you. So one key area of eastern Ukraine, the Donbas region, has long been a focal point of diplomatic disputes between Russia and Ukraine. Why is that region so important, George? And what kind of implications would it have if Ukraine were to surrender it to Russia to end this war?
Yeah, and I think our viewers need to get used to this word, the Donbas region. Let's go to the map and I'll tell you exactly what it looks like. The Donbas region consists of two primary provinces up there in the northeast part. It's Luhansk and Donetsk. And as you can see there from the map, all that red, that's Russian territory. Russian military controls it. The checkered areas of Donetsk and a little portion of Luhansk, what Putin wants is to take all of Donetsk, all of Zaporizhia, and all of Kherson. But right now, Jenna, the focus is on the Donetsk region that makes up what's called the Donbas, those two provinces. And the reason he wants Donetsk, the rest of Donetsk, is because the Ukrainian military has a massive military outpost, basically a beachhead, preventing the Russians from taking even more land. It's a major military operation. If the Russians are able to get the rest of Donetsk in some kind of a peace agreement, it will give them very quick access to Kharkiv, which is right on the other side of the Russian border, and pretty much a straight shot at Kyiv. And Zelenskyy wants absolutely not to do that and to prevent the Russians from getting that the Donetsk region. If it does get Donetsk, what it can do, in essence, is do what's a pincer movement, come in from the southern part, from Kherson, from Zaporizhia, and basically encroach, pretty much surround Ukrainian forces. And right now, I think the negotiations are going to center around that entire what's called a line of contact, deploying potential peacekeeping troops all along that region to prevent Russians from taking any more land in the future. Yeah,
speaking of this peacekeeping troops, President Trump has told the European leaders that Putin has actually agreed to so-called security guarantees for Ukraine if he does get his way in ending this war. What would those guarantees include, George?
Yeah, as we come on the air, there's actually some reporting coming out of Moscow that the Russian Foreign Ministry, headed by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, his office, there's some pushback because part of the security guarantee is deploying of peacekeeping troops. And today at the White House, the President of the United States initially scoffed at the idea of security guarantees months ago. Today talked about the potential of deploying U.S. troops along with NATO countries, European countries, in what's called an Article 5-like kind of posture, that in case something happens, if the Russians decide to engage and go for more territory, that these European countries, along with the United States, would, in essence, counter that. What's interesting is, it's not surprising that the foreign ministry in Moscow would be pushing back at this idea, because think of it like this, for the European continent. Think of the Korean War when it ended back in 1953. We had an armistice, and we have today about 28,000 U.S. troops based in South Korea as a strategic against the North Koreans. What Zelenskyy wants is something similar that would prevent the Russians from taking any more land from Ukraine.
Yeah. George, I want to switch gears while I have you here. In addition to this war, of course, the White House is dealing with the war between Israel and Hamas. What is the latest on the negotiations in the Middle East in just the few seconds we have left?
Yeah, all of this comes as the Israelis are getting ready. They're ramping up to do a major military operation that would basically take over the largest enclave on that Palestinian strip, push everybody down in the south. Hamas suddenly says that it's willing to, to agree to a potential ceasefire, a 60-day ceasefire that the United States and the Israelis had proposed about 6 months ago, a few months ago. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, hearing about this agreement by Hamas, saying that they're willing to go along with the ceasefire, basically dismissed the idea and basically said that the Israelis were going to go ahead and keep moving on their military offensive on the Palestinian enclave.
Okay, senior international correspondent George Thomas. George, thank you. In other news, Texas Democrats returned to the Lone Star State today, ending a weeks-long standoff over a Republican push to gain 5 new congressional seats ahead of the 2026 midterms. State Representative James Tallarico was among the Texas Democrats who fled in protest. He and others likened the GOP plan to racial gerrymandering. On Sunday, Tallarico, who's also a seminary graduate, delivered a sermon at Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago's South Side, where he drew a striking parallel between the situation in Texas to the man his Baptist preacher grandfather referred to as the barefoot rabbi.
2,000 years ago, when the powerful few abused the many, that barefoot rabbi walked into the seat of power and flipped over the tables of injustice. His love rose to meet that abuse without becoming it. To those who love democracy, to those who love our neighbors, it's time to start flipping tables.
And Texas Democrats returned under 2 conditions. One, that the legislature would end its first special session, making Governor Abbott convene a second. And 2, California Democrats launched their own redistricting fight to gain 5 congressional seats to offset Texas. Republicans accused Democrats of delaying aid to recent flood victims by leaving the state. All right, coming up, transgender rights and a political showdown. We take a look at the biggest cultural clashes headed to the Supreme Court. Welcome back. Well, tonight we are getting a glimpse of a few of the high-profile cases that could come before the U.S. Supreme Court next term. Those cases include some major religious and cultural hot-button issues that could impact everything from the politics to the place of transgender athletes in women's sports. And here to help us break down some of the biggest cases is Brad Jacob, Associate Dean and Professor at Regent University's School of Law. Brad, welcome. Great to see you. So there are a couple of cases that revolve around transgender people and sports. What can you tell us about those?
Yeah, there's actually 2 different cases, Jenna. One is a university level case out in Idaho. This is what they call a transgender woman, so a biological man who identifies as a woman and wants to compete on women's track and cross-country teams at Boise State University. This violates Idaho state law, and this individual is claiming that that's a violation of her fundamental rights to compete as a woman in sports. And there's a second case out of West Virginia that involves a 14-year-old biological boy who identifies as a girl who wants to compete on girls' sports teams in middle school. And so both of these are going to go to the Supreme Court, have been accepted already for argument, to decide whether the state may require athletes, whether it's college level, middle school, high school, to compete with their biological sex, or whether males who identify as females can compete against females where they typically have a significant advantage because of the male physiology. Interestingly, in the middle school case, the Court of Appeals found that it violated Title IX, which is the federal statute, the part of the Civil Rights Act that protects women in education, that this violated women's rights to not allow the transgender person to compete as a girl in sports. I'm pretty confident that this Supreme Court is going to go the other way on both of these. They're going to say that it is perfectly reasonable for a state to define sports participation based on your biology rather than your psychological understanding of yourself. And that Title IX, which was supposed to protect women's sports, should keep biological men out rather than saying biological men have to be included. So my guess is in both of these, the trans litigants are probably going to lose.
I want to ask you, there's also a push to overturn gay marriage. That's also being rekindled. Kim Davis, the Kentucky clerk jailed for refusing to issue marriage licenses to gay couples, she has formally filed a request asking the court to review its 2015 ruling. What are the chances the justices actually agree to hear this case, Brad?
Well, they may agree to hear the case, and they could indeed find that Ms. Davis has to be allowed to not sign marriage licenses for same-sex couples, that her office would have to have someone else do that if it violates her religious conscience. I think the odds of the Supreme Court overruling Obergefell versus Hodges, which was the case where the court redefined marriage for all 50 states, I think the odds of the court overruling that are very slight.
Yeah.
It's just different from abortion. It's a different issue. Now, the Obergefell case was on no stronger constitutional grounds than Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
The Constitution doesn't protect a right to abortion, and it doesn't protect the right of same-sex couples to marry.
Yeah.
Marriage historically has always been a man and a woman. That's what marriage is. And so the Supreme Court forced it to be reconsidered. But it's a very different issue.
Brad, I'm so sorry to cut you off there. We unfortunately are out of time. We could talk for there's so many interesting cases coming before the court, but we appreciate you coming on tonight. We'll have you on again soon. Brad Jacob, Associate Dean and Professor at Regent University School of Law. Brad, thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure.
And we'll be right back. Well, August means it's back to school for kids across the country. Many will face the pressures that all kids face at school, and social media only makes that worse. Wendy Griffith, she introduces us to triplets using social media, Instagram specifically, to spread the gospel. Take a look.
The Helms brothers, Gage, Till, and Caden. About a year ago, their parents gave the 18-year-old identical triplets the green light to get on social media, never dreaming they'd become literal overnight sensations.
We always talk to people about Jesus in person and stuff, but, you know, like Till said, we knew social media was blowing up, and we never had it our whole life. So we were like, well, we can use it for a good purpose. So we started then and just made one video that really took everything off, and it was a back-to-school video, how just let your light shine, you know, let Jesus shine through you.
I encourage all of you guys to be set apart this year. If you see somebody sitting alone in lunch by themselves, go sit by them, ask people how their day is going, just talk to people about Jesus, be that kind person that someone needs. You know?
We made that video and we posted it and we went to sleep. It was at night, it was like 9 at night. And then we woke up and it just blew up and we were like, what just happened?
It had like 100,000 views and we were like, wait
in like 8 hours, and God just blessed it. So then we were like, all right guys, we should actually do this.
Since then, 3-in-1 Trilogy, as they're known on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, have been posting nearly every day. The brothers say their topics, ranging from how to deal with peer pressure to dating advice, come easy to them.
We usually do like what we're like struggling on or what we're thinking about. Like for a long time in the beginning at school, we were like, a lot of people don't have hope, so we need to talk about hope. And then we were like, a lot of people are having doubt, like they're doubting God. So we were like, we can really talk about doubt because everybody doubts at some point.
So once the guys find a scripture and a topic for their daily devotional, all they need is a great location. Well, they just happen to live next to beautiful Lake Norman near Charlotte, North Carolina. And then this is when the magic happens.
Yo, what's up everybody? This video is for all the youth out there, and we want to share a Bible verse with you guys. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. That's exactly right, guys. There's so many things that are trendy right now, and all these teenagers are following all these certain things, but I just want to encourage you guys to follow Jesus. He might not be trending, but he is the way, the truth, and the light.
Although they have many followers their own age, some of their biggest fans are moms.
Some of our friends will be like, yeah, my mom follows you guys, and she sends me all these videos, so that's like funny.
When the brothers aren't posting videos, they're wrestling. All three have won numerous awards in high school and plan to wrestle together this fall at Gardner-Webb University. Their mom, Charity, says she's not surprised they chose wrestling. Born premature, they literally had to fight for their lives.
They were born at 28 weeks, and they only were 2 pounds.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. They were on ventilator, you know, early on, and they had their struggles, but they all came home completely healthy. And I'm like, don't take that for granted, that you get to wrestle, that you get to be healthy, smart teenage boy. You know, like, we're blessed, and I'll never take that for granted.
The guys say wrestling has also taught them spiritual lessons.
The Bible says that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and darkness. Like, I gotta wake up every day, and instead of like, okay, I gotta become the best wrestler I gotta be, no, I gotta fight like my flesh, and I gotta pursue Jesus.
Although the world may be just getting to know the Helms triplets, their mom says their love for Jesus and preaching started at an early age.
No credit deserved here is, as you well know, it's all about what God chooses to do. You know, He many times chooses the least of us to do wonderful and great things, and not to say they're least, but you know, 3 kids from North Carolina are out spreading the gospel all around the world.
Stepfather Jeff has helped raise them since they were 3.
They live out their faith. One of the things that we try to teach them from an early age, words don't carry a lot of meaning these days, but faith, action, how you live your life is what people respond to. You know, being a light and kids sitting by themselves, there's an authenticity there. There's a built-in genuineness, I think, that people responded to.
Gage, Till, and Caden say while their focus will be on the books and wrestling at college, they still plan to post Christian social media content and would also be open to other opportunities.
We've always said, and this is what Mom always said, we could have our own reality TV show.
This house is never quiet.
Yeah, never.
This house is never quiet.
Whatever God has planned. I think we could like entertain some people though. I mean, we entertain each other.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Denver, North Carolina.
Finally tonight, a heartwarming father-daughter tradition is now impacting hundreds. Rosie Pollock was only 10 years old when she attended her first sleepaway camp, but she remembers the handwritten letter her dad sent her saying how proud and excited he was for his daughter. Well, he kept the letters going over the years, sending Rosie more than 3,500 letters. Rosie is now 30 years old, and her dad, Buzz Eckner, sends letters to his grandson. So Rosie wondered if others could benefit from her dad's thoughtfulness. She started a website called the Dad Letter Project and shared this message to random strangers on TikTok.
It's more than willing to be your dad via the snail mail.
And more than 600 people from around the world signed up to receive a letter, and now Rosie and her dad are recruiting other dads to help share the love. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.